Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Simiu. I am delighted to say that I've got the brilliant Phil Costa alongside me. I'm sure you've heard his voice on the Arsenal Vision pod. You'd have heard him on the Arscast, on his own pod, Football Vision, which is fantastic as well. Phil, welcome back to the show, mate. It's been a while. Good to chat to you.
Yeah, morning, mate. It has been a while, but we were just talking off air before starting the recording, and I think there's some news to get into right away. So hopefully we'll help to dispel some anxiety if the people are worried about some certain things.
Yeah. So what Phil's alluding to there is that just before we hit the go live button, there was a report that came out of Portugal from, I think it's called Ebola or Abola. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Phil might know better than me. But there was a report coming out that said basically that the Victor Gyökeres to Arsenal transfer is in danger of collapse. That Arsenal are thinking about walking away because of Sporting's demands. We've heard for a while that, Arsenal have been in advanced talks. We heard from Ben Jacobs last night that the last official contact between the two clubs took place on Sunday. And as soon as I read that, I was like, well, this is it now. People are going to be saying, what on earth have you lot been doing all week? Why has there not been any progress? And today, we're hearing this. I mean, I'm not massively worried about this. I still think that this is a deal that gets done. What's your kind of reaction, Phil, to the news that I call it news? It might not be news, but the reports, shall we say, that have broken just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, it feels very pointed, doesn't it? I mean, this is very normal, I think, in a transfer window where one club wants one thing, another club wants another thing. And, it's about the optics, it's about how you position yourselves in the deal, how you make yourself look to your fans and other people, for example. I'm not worried about it, to be honest. I think it would be quite an incredible collapse for the deal to fall through now, especially when the reported differences between both sides' valuations are what 5 million, or how the add-ons will be structured, for example. So I really don't think there's anything to worry about. Gyökeres has already made his stance very clear. He wants to join Arsenal. He's ready to go on strike to kind of force through that move, and that's just not sustainable for Sporting. So I think this is a bit of posturing from their side, saying, look, we're not going to be bullied or mucked around here. We've got our valuation. We're going to stick to it. But I would be amazed to see this one fall through because they can't afford it. They can't afford to let this one go through, and neither can Arsenal. So this is very much a game of chicken for me. I think maybe there might be some disagreements or some frustration with how Arsenal have come to the table or how Sporting are holding firm, but ultimately this is a deal that's going to get done. I think it's been too much, or there's been too much noise around it for it to fall through now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've been saying since yesterday that even from the day before, when sort of some reports emerged to the effect of the deal is stalling. Well, something stalling doesn't mean it's off, right? You stall your car, it doesn't mean you go give it in and say it's been written off, do you? Like, it happens, right? You just restart the engine and you go again until you achieve what you want to achieve. I think for me, look, Sporting are very clear on what they want. I think the fact that they know Victor Gyökeres is desperate for this Arsenal move means that they feel that they stand a great chance of getting that out of Arsenal. So we keep talking about how the Gyökeres, desire to join Arsenal benefits us in this negotiation. It also benefits them as well. That's the flip side of it. They're saying, well, if Gyökeres really wants to join Arsenal and he's really pushing and he's doing all of these things that he's said to be doing to make this happen, he's going to go on strike, etc., etc., Arsenal will probably eventually buckle and give us our additional 4 or 5 million quid, whatever it is. So I think sometimes in a situation like this, you just need to step back and look at it from both sides. I mean, I've spoken loads about Gyökeres, Sesko. We haven't spoken, I don't think, since that really became a thing. Was Victor Gyökeres your preference, or were you leaning towards Benjamin Sesko?
I found myself leaning towards Benjamin Sesko because he's a striker in the mold of what I think we need under this iteration of whatever we are under Mikel Arteta. We have thrived with a big man up front, whether that's Kai Havertz and to a lesser extent Mikel Merino. And I just felt like Sesko was quite analogous to that profile, someone tall, someone big, someone we can bounce off. He has good box threat, good aerial threat. So that just felt like the easiest solution to me. And also, I think there's a lot of talent and potential there to work with, to mold. I've got no doubt in his quality, and I think that he could be a really good striker in the future. However, the gap wasn't big enough for me between the two to justify paying 90 million euros for Sesko and then, to worry about Gyökeres at a 55, 60, 65 million euros. So I think they're different. I think Gyökeres brings an aggression, a physicality, a single-mindedness to scoring goals, which I think we lack in the team, to be honest. It might not always look pretty. He's not going to be doing Berbatov spins on the touchline. He's not going to be pirouetting away from people. But what he does bring is repeated sprints in behind the back line, a lot of hard running, aggressive movement, and he scores goals. So I think maybe in terms of that side of things, his mentality, that sheer desire and aggression and willingness to score goals could offer us something a little bit different. And there was a moment where I think it might have been towards the end of March where Andrea Berta had maybe been in the role for 2 or 3 weeks, and there was an article that came out in the Athletic. David Ornstein wrote it, and it said Arsenal add Victor Gyökeres to their summer transfer list. He's a firm admirer, Berta is a firm admirer of the Swedish striker, and I just thought that feels very pointed at the moment because all the talk had been about Sheshko. There was maybe some Ollie Watkins noise in the background, but for him to singularly identify Gyökeres and also name drop Andrea Berta, that just felt very pertinent to me. So I'm not surprised at all we've gone this way. He's a cheaper initial outlay. I'm not sure about the wages, and maybe the club just say, look, we wanted Seshko, but I can't justify paying 90 million euros. There's no wiggle room with RB Leipzig, and we need someone in before preseason. So that's kind of where we are at the moment, and I think I'm just glad more than anything that we've made a decision, because we couldn't afford this to be a 2 week or even 2 month saga heading into some crucial times for us. So make a decision, go for it. Gyökeres is the guy. I think this is a bit of chicken now to get it over the line, and I'm sure we will.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it will get over the line. I think Fabrizio Romano came out last night, didn't he? And he was on video saying, I think he used the term calma to just say, relax. This is still on. This is still happening. There will be a bit of chicken because we've heard of Friday being a kind of somewhat significant date in this, not because the deal cannot be done on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday to follow, but more so because obviously Victor Gyökeres is due to return to preseason training, having been given already a bit of an extended leave to try and get this done. So, yeah, I think people have maybe made too much of the importance of Friday. And because we're at Thursday and there's now these reports, I think that was always going to create a little bit of nervousness. But, and I don't mean to discredit anyone's reporting because I don't know any better and I don't claim to. But I mean, the outlets that have put this out, two Portuguese outlets, two outlets that have made very strong suggestions in the last couple of weeks that this was already done, I'm not going to take them too seriously. If David Ornstein comes out in the next 10 minutes or later on today and says this deal is in serious danger of collapsing, we'll be right back on here and we'll be melting down live, but not now. Not now. It's way too early for that. We got to talk about Noni Madueke. This has been one of the most remarkable responses I think I've ever experienced to Arsenal being linked with a player. And I tried to think about it last night. I was sort of sitting there and I was thinking, okay, what are the deals that during Mikel Arteta's reign, there's been a lot of opposition to? And I think about me, I can only, go by what I felt at the time. Aaron Ramsdale at £30 million. I remember looking at that and going, that's way too much money. Then you've got, maybe Kai Havertz. I mean, I like Kai Havertz, and I actually did a podcast before we were even linked to him. And I said that if he was available for something like 40 million, I'd roll the dice on him. In the end, we ended up paying way too much, but I think that one's gone okay. So we were proven wrong there. But those were the only two really, because some of the other signings that Mikel's made that haven't really worked out, they haven't been for hugely significant amounts of money. Fabio Vieira, okay, 35 odd million quid. And there's been a few around the 20, 25 million pound mark. But Generally speaking, our big signings, our big money transfers have worked. So why is there so much opposition to the idea of Noni Madueke coming in? What's your view on it?
First and foremost, I think there's a lot of Chelsea fatigue. You know, there's this image or idea of Arsenal always willing to help Chelsea somehow financially when they're in a bad spot. We saw something similar with Havertz. We gave them £65 million in that summer when they needed to raise a lot of money. Obviously, they sold Mason Mount to Manchester United as well, which got them a significant pretty penny there. But I just feel like we're tired of looking at Chelsea, you know, because we're better than them. We've got higher ambitions than them. We got to a Champions League semi-final last season. We were challenging for the title until we fell away. So to go again, to look down the table to a team who are not performing as well as us and taking one of their, I'm not going to say rejects because I don't think Madueke is a reject, but he's someone who's deemed surplus to requirements. If a good offer comes in, they're ready to part ways, and it just feels like we're doing them a bit of a favor again, especially because they've got Esteval, they've got Pedro Neto, they've got all these other players coming in, Jamie Gittins. So that for me is the overriding emotion of the deal, is that it's just like going back to Chelsea again, giving them money. And also, the frustrating thing for me is if we know that Chelsea are in a bit of a difficult spot, why don't we try and play with them a little bit? Why have we just gone straight in with a £50 million bid when maybe we could have started at 35 plus 5 or a 40 plus 5? But no, it's like £50 million including add-ons. They want a little bit more. It could even get to 55 million, like an Elanga price, for example. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money when we think about where else we might need to strengthen. Do we want to go for an Eze? Do we want to go for a Rodrygo? And I know those deals might be a bit harder to do, but it just feels like we're giving up too easily on this, you know. And I think if we do want Madueke, which is absolutely fine, we haven't really shown our hands a lot in this negotiation. We've gone straight in with a very respectable bid, a reasonable bid. I think Chelsea will more or less be happy to take that, barring a few million either side. And also the player himself, I think there is talent there. I like him. I like him in terms of what he brings to the team. He's very direct. He likes to run in behind. He can play on either side. I know he played more on the left towards the end of last season, where he showed some nice bits for Chelsea, but mostly he's a right winger that likes to come inside on his right foot. So for me, in terms of squad building, I don't think he's a natural fit into the team, because then I think, well, instead of spending 55 million or 50 million on Madueke, can we not just hand Ethan those minutes on the right, and then he can also play centrally as well when we need him to? So it's a problem because we've needed to help Saka. You know, we've needed a backup, and that hasn't happened over the last 2 seasons. So I really understand why we might want to go for this player. But there's just a lot surrounding the deal. And I think the way I will eventually view it, if he does sign, is based on the context around the deal itself. So does it impact us signing other people? Where are we going in terms of price? What happens with the future of Ethan Nwaneri, and who else we bring in? So that is ultimately the context around the deal for me. And I can maybe put it to one side and say, okay, as a third attacker coming in, I'm more than happy to have him here. But if it's him and Gyökeres, I will be looking at our outlay and think, have we maximized our resources here? I'm not so sure.
That's exactly what I've been saying as well. You know, if he comes in as the third attacker, and by the end of the window you get another attacking player in as well as the striker, then you could probably look at it and you can say, okay, you know, and I guess the thinking has to be, you know, look, we've been almost obsessing, haven't we, over the idea of bringing in a left winger this summer. As a fan base, that's kind of where our minds have gone. But really, when you think about it, if Trossard is staying, and there is rumours linking him with a move away, there's rumours linking Martinelli with a move away. But if those two stay, you've got two, what you would class as natural left wingers. But on the right side, you've only got one. So I understand why you would look at it and go, okay, Madueke, right-sided player. But the bit I really struggle, Phil, to get my head around is, why would Noni Madueke want to come in and be the guy that backs up Saka? It's like when, sorry to reference them, but it's like when Spurs had Kane and everybody used to say, well, why don't they go and get another striker? Who was going to come in knowing that they were always going to play second fiddle to Harry Kane at Spurs. And it's the same here. Who is going to come in? Well, obviously, Noni Madueke wants to come in, but who in their right mind would want to come knowing that the large, the majority of their minutes are going to be spent either coming off of the bench or playing in place of a player who, in the biggest of occasions, on the biggest of games, will always start in front of them?
Maybe he won't be coming in to do that. Maybe he is coming to be a left winger primarily if we sell Trossard, for example, to Fenerbahce. Is it extra competition for Martinelli on that left-hand side, who hasn't been as good as he can be or as good as we know he can be over the past 18 months? This could be some 4D chess maybe from Mikel Arteta saying, look, you can come in and play on the right, but I want to turn you into a left winger, someone who can get their head down, go towards the byline, even drift inside on occasion. So I don't know. I really don't know the optics of this deal. I do know that Arteta is the one pushing for it, which is interesting to me because I think Berta is the one pushing for Gyökeres. So I think that little dynamic there between the two is interesting. I know he's spoken to the family. I know he's spoken to the player. So it is a decision being pushed through and forced through by the manager. So whatever he's seen in the player, he likes and is willing to push the boat out for. Um, I mean, I'm really not down on the player. I think there is potential there. I think there is talent there. I'm quite surprised Spurs or Newcastle haven't tried to move for him, although Newcastle have obviously gone for Elanga now. Spurs have gone for Kudus. I thought he would have been quite a natural fit for both of those teams, but ultimately we're the ones that are pushing for him. We're the only ones pushing for him. So yeah, the Saka question is an obvious one, and ultimately he will be first choice when he's fit. But if we can give him a bit of a rest on occasion, if we can say to Madueke, look, you know that Saka's great, but can you be bold enough and brave enough to back yourself and say, maybe one day I can overtake him? Who knows? But I think he's coming in primarily as backup to play both sides or either side. And that's just how I see it for now. And I think, again, the fact that he's not supernatural on both sides, I wouldn't say he's a left winger now, even though I know he can play there, whereas Rodrygo is a lot more natural on either side, I would say, or a Semenyo, someone like that. But I, I'm kind of making my peace with the deal because I think once Arteta gets his teeth into someone, more often than not, they end up at the club. So we just have to kind of trust his talent ID, and say, what can you do with this player?
Yeah, and I think you've got to look. I think I understand the reaction that we've seen online. I do, because if you're spending around about £50 million on a player that people aren't convinced about, generally speaking, and I know you said you're sort of quite big on the player. Listen, if you'd have asked me 3 weeks ago, before the Madueke links to Arsenal came up, if you'd have said to me, Harry, what do you think of Noni Madueke? I would have said, do you know what? He's talented, he's lively, maybe blows a little bit hot and cold for me, but I don't think he's a bad player. That's never really been my issue here. My fear is what this means for us with regards to the rest of the window. That is my biggest fear here. And so, I've expressed that concern and I've expressed that worry. I think we can both agree that people starting petitions, no to Madueke and hashtags online, that's going way too far. And just put yourself in the player's shoes for a minute. Like, you want this player to come in, if he is going to come in, and perform at the highest possible level. How on earth are we helping him by creating an environment like that? You can be critical of an idea, of a signing, but there's a way of going about it. If people were sitting there going, not really the priority for me, don't really understand why we've gone for this one, let's see how it goes, and I'm Noni Madueke, I'm coming in with the attitude of, I'm going to shut you all up. Now, if I'm Noni Madueke, I'm coming in with the attitude of, how the hell can I succeed here? Don't you think the reaction has just been, I understand the viewpoint generally speaking, but I think the way some people have expressed that view has been ridiculous.
I mean, obviously, it's really dumb, right? I mean, to go to that kind of length, I mean, to start a petition, there's been abuse on his Instagram. It's just stupid, and I think it's quite an eye-opening thing into the world that we live in at the moment with social media and everything. But players don't really care. I think they can block out this noise, and more often than not, the most important thing is what the manager thinks of you, what your teammates think of you. And I think he will know people from the England squad, Saka, Declan Rice, A lot of these guys he'll know already. Arteta will have sat down and spoken with him. I think a lot of the noise is just noise and they won't pay too much attention to it. I know that players will have a look on their phone, they'll have a scroll, see what people are saying, what people are thinking, but ultimately the most important thing is the opinion of the manager and their teammates. So yes, it's ridiculous and it's silly and we need to just relax a bit. But I think a lot of this anxiety and frustration stems from the fact that we are so desperate to win something.
Yeah.
And when we look at some of the signings that we've been linked with, and when you see Noni Madueke, maybe that instant he's going to take us to the promised land is not always there. So a lot of it comes from just us being so desperate to win something, anything, because we know that time is short, right? This is our third year with this group now, more or less. People are coming into their prime. You know, there's contract issues to sort out with Saka and Saliba. We have to win. We have to win. And I think if we don't, we leave ourselves open to losing some of our key players and sort of failing with another rebuild, which is something that we don't want. So there's just a lot of stuff around it. You know, the Chelsea stuff, the price, this anxiety to win. You know, it's just all sort of muddled up into one big cocktail, and people are struggling to find an outlet for it, basically, and it's just exploded in this kind of reaction.
And also, you know, if we had signed, for instance, Gyökeres, if that was done over the line, and then we'd got Eberechi Eze or somebody else in the door, and then you heard about Noni Madueke, I think again the perception of the move would be very, very
Absolutely.
different. You know, it'd be very, very different. I think the anxiety that we're talking about, the frustration, it is, as well as all the things you said, the fact that this window probably hasn't gone the way that people wanted it to just yet. And you know, I know you believe that Christian Norgaard's a really good signing. I think he's a decent player, but when I first heard about it, and you know, I knew that we were losing Thomas Partey and Jorginho, my first instinct was Zubimendi's coming in. This guy's got to adapt, and then Norgaard's coming in, and you know, maybe we could have managed that transition to be less drastic in one go. And at the time, that was my kind of reaction to it. And I got a lot of shit for that. But as I say, it's a bit like the Madueke thing. It was never about the player himself. It was never, oh, Norgaard is crap or Madueke is crap. It's nothing to do with that. It's about the bigger picture. And all of this, as you say, stems from this desperate want that we all feel right now to go on and get over the line and crown this project off with something. Because if we drop off next season, which could happen, you never know. You never know. Football things change very, very quickly. Then there will be a lot of reflection on this summer, last summer, the January window in between, and some of the decisions that we've taken along that road. So this feels like a massive season as a result of all of those factors. Do you think, Phil, that if we go back to, I don't know, midway through last season, let's say just before Saka picked up that serious injury, do you think Arsenal would have been as desperate to bring in a predominantly right-sided wide player? Or do you think that what happened to Bukayo Saka, the fact that it then happened to some other players whereby their hamstrings were pretty much ripped off the bones because, in my opinion, they were probably overworked and overused. Do you think that's almost pushed Arsenal into a position where they've had to look at the depth in certain areas and go, listen, maybe we could do with an upgrade on the left, but actually we need to make sure that we cover on the right as well?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's no way that they could have gone through this summer or another season without enough attacking depth. I mean, obviously, we were unlucky last year with the injuries, but also you're right to say that look who got injured and how many minutes they played over the last two seasons and why that might have happened. So ultimately, we haven't spent enough reconstructing our attack. We've shown the Premier League and our rivals the same face. We've lacked that star quality in Europe. We've lacked that transitional power. It was time to spend some money and get some real players in this summer. And whether that's Šeško, Gyökeres, Madueke, Rodrygo, either way, we've needed to get somebody in. So I don't think Arteta could have gone another season without it, to be honest. And I think obviously the injury to Saka and Havertz last season just kind of magnified that because, I mean, the Havertz injury in particular was the most obvious thing. I know it happened in Dubai in the kind of, was it warm winter break kind of thing, but he was collapsing on the pitch, you know, at full time just through sheer exhaustion. He was playing every 3 days, being battered from pillar to post by centre backs, running the channels. The fact that he was out for the season just surprised nobody, and of course it happened 3 days after the window shut, where we decided not to sign anyone. So it was just the most obvious thing in the world. Saka going down can happen, but again, he's played a lot of football and he's a young guy. So we need to protect him and his career. We want him to be at his best for as long as possible. And I think if he's playing every day or every 3 days like Arteta wants him to, we're just going to run him into the ground. So it was absolutely necessary to bolster our attacking options, because last season we had Nathan Butler-Oyedeji and Raheem Sterling. That just can't happen. We're playing in a Champions League semi-final. We need more. So again, I'm not saying people can't be upset with the Madueke deal, because I am still a bit cold on it. I have to be honest, even though I like the player at times. I think it's a bit of a strange one, I have to say. For the manager to have identified him as the guy just feels a bit strange to me, because I don't think he's pulled up many trees for Chelsea, even though there's been like various purple patches where he scored hat tricks and whatnot. I'm not saying people can't be upset about it. This is what we can do as fans, is we can be critical, but also there needs to be some kind of context around things as well. So ultimately, again, I'm looking at the Madueke deal in a group context. If he comes in alone and he's the only forward addition, then I will have some more things to say. But there's still a long way to go. Things can change. Rodrygo could put in a transfer request. Eze could put in a transfer request. We could find a way to negotiate a deal down. I don't know. Maybe Al Nassr come in for Martinelli. That changes things again. So I'm prepared to just sit tight a little bit and wait to see how we finish the window. Because otherwise, overall, I think we've done a good job. Kepa was a good signing. Zubimendi, great. Norgard, very sensible backup option. I think Mosquera could be done pretty soon as well. So overall, I'm happy with what we've done so far, but strengthening the attack was the most important thing, let's be honest. And they're the signings that get you excited. They're the ones that get you out of your seat. And it was imperative that we've had to do it for injuries, but also to maintain genuine title and Champions League challenges.
Yeah, completely agree. We're going to take a short break, but just before we do that, I want to let you guys know that Hand of Arsenal has been tweeting about the Gyökeres situation. He said 15 minutes ago, my understanding as of yesterday night was that talks remain positive between Arsenal and Sporting. Gyökeres told the president yesterday he won't be returning to pre-season. Again, very important to stress, there is no club-to-club agreement yet. Arsenal do have backup options. I mean, that last line, I thought this was really positive. It says, Arsenal do have backup options, just to make sure that people's heads are still spinning. He then tweeted shortly after, look, I understand many of us are emotional and our connection to this club runs deep, including me, but it's important to remain honest and professional. The deal for Gyökeres is very advanced. If that changes, highly credible people will inform you. Let's remain calm until then. So he's urging calm. And he's been great during this transfer window. There's no question about that. He's been fantastic in terms of getting to some of the news first. And when David Ornstein's crediting you with a story, then that says a lot, doesn't it? Look, we're going to take a really, really brief pause. When we come back, we're going to continue our discussion around all the latest Arsenal news. If I could just remind you, if you haven't done so already, leave a like on the video. There's over 1,000 of you with us live on YouTube right now, which is incredible. Please hit that like button. Subscribe to us on Patreon if you're interested. The link's in the description below. You'll get access to all our pods ad-free, as well as some bonus stuff as well, the next of which will be dropping later on today, which is a video bit around Noni Madueke, seen as he's the flavour of the month at the moment. Also, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review. All of that stuff really, really does help. We'll be back in just a sec. Okay, we talked loads about Noni Madueke, loads about what's going on at the minute with Victor Gyökeres. How do you think all of this impacts Ethan Nwaneri? Now, I'm not too worried at the moment about the contract talks. I think they are moving in the right direction. And I think it's much more likely that he signs on at Arsenal than it is that he departs. But you touched on something earlier where you said the minutes on the right-hand side, Nwaneri could play them. I would argue that Gabby Jesus, when he's back, could play some of them as well. That's another option for Arsenal on that right-hand side. But whatever way you look at this, whether it's Madueke, whether it's Eze, whether it's both, it does feel like business that we're doing this summer could directly take away minutes from Ethan Nwaneri. Does that worry you?
What worries me is that he's rejected 2 contracts. You know, I think I've heard a few things on the grapevine that I didn't really believe at first, to be honest. I heard that he wasn't super happy with his involvement last year, even though he was playing almost a record number of minutes in games for a 17-year-old in their first professional season. But there has just been a bit of noise coming from him or his people. I'm not sure exactly who it is that he's not completely happy with where he's playing, how much he's playing. And there were also some rumors that we're shopping him out to Germany, either on loan or on a permanent deal, just to kind of gauge the market there. I think it would be a huge shame to lose him. And honestly, I don't know why that's even an option, because I think we've given him a lot already. He's been grown at the club, molded, developed by people here, various coaches. He's come through, scored nearly double digits last season. He was playing in the Champions League. He was a really important player for us and actually gave us something different, something extra, because he's a shooter. You know, he's someone who is not afraid to cut inside and just shoot, whereas I think others are a bit more Goldilocks, looking for the perfect moment that's just right, whereas he's just like, right, I'm going to get this on my left foot and smack it. So I think he offers the team something unique. I think you could see physically he wasn't quite there yet. He'd sort of die down around the 65, 70-minute mark. And then there was the injury in January when we played him against, was it Brighton? I think he even scored in that game. So his body is developing. He's developing. I don't think he's ready yet to contribute consistently as a number 8 or as a number 10. I think at the moment his minutes are much more effective and impactful in the wide areas. He can play either side, to be honest, for me. I'm not saying he's a left winger, but he could potentially play on either side in a cup game or against lower league opposition. I don't really get his concerns. And if it's purely a money thing, then that's something else. But if there are genuine concerns about where he's playing and how much he's playing, I don't agree. So for me, I'd be more than happy to just sit him down and say, look, let's be honest here. You're playing a huge amount for a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old. Maybe only Lamine Yamal is playing more than you as an attacker. Just be a bit sensible here. Think about your career. There are opportunities for you. There's a pathway here for you. We can play you on the right. There are occasional minutes up for grabs in the middle, and we'll see what happens from there. But the more Madueke is linked, the more Eze is linked, I do get a bit worried about where that potential situation is. Although I do think it will be sorted, because I look around and I don't know what other options he has. I know there's 1 year left on his deal, so that could be challenging for us. Maybe he's available on a free or a cut price deal. But I don't see another natural fit for him, or another top club like Arsenal where he plays regularly. So for me, it's a strange one. I think this might be a bit of posturing as well from his people. We know that there was a lot of talk about City and Chelsea before he signed his initial professional deal. And actually, a lot of people thought he was going to go to Chelsea. It was a very late swing that he managed to stay at Arsenal. So let's see. I think it would be hugely disappointing, because him and Miles have come through together. I don't know. Things can happen in football. I've learned to never take anything for granted in this sport, because things can change very quickly. People can have their heads turned very quickly. Money is a huge factor. Whispers from the agent can get into his head. I don't know, but I think it would be a huge shame, because I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be happy at Arsenal based on what we saw last season. So either way, there's a lot of negotiating to do. I think if he's good enough, the way I see it is if he's good enough, he will play.
Yeah.
And I don't see why he should be owed or expected minutes purely based on his talent, because nobody is due that. So he needs to prove himself, and I think there are opportunities for him to do that next season. Whether or not he wants to do that is another thing. I would be more than happy to see him go out on loan. If he wants to sign and go out on loan somewhere to Germany or to the Netherlands, do it by all means. If we have enough coming in terms of attacking support, attacking depth, by all means, go and do that. Play regularly, but to leave feels very drastic to me, and I would be very, very disappointed to see it happen.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Look, for the record, I think he stays, but there's a lot of noise around this, and you can understand again why people are starting to worry about it a little bit. On the kind of whole chat around Madueke, Nwaneri, and all of that stuff, it kind of got me thinking last night. Why is it that other clubs are seemingly so good at flipping players for profits, yet Arsenal don't seem to be very good at that at all. And for a while, I was very much of the opinion of, we've had some bad management in the past. We've had some poor people at the top of the club calling the shots, dictating the transfer business, running the transfer policy. We ended up with a lot of players that were on big salaries that nobody wanted to touch for that reason. We were never going to get back what we invested in those players. But over time, Phil, that has to correct itself. I still look at the Arsenal squad and I still look around and I go, can we really raise money like from players that are fringe players in the way that Chelsea can now with Noni Madueke? And I know that we're a big part of that because we keep buying players off of them. But there's other clubs as well out there that seem to be very good at generating funds from players that don't necessarily make up a part of their best 11. Yet for Arsenal, that feels impossible pretty much every window we go into. And that's got me begging the question of why. I mean, you could probably do a whole podcast on this, but in terms of your initial thoughts on that question, where do you kind of stand on it? Why are we in this situation where if we do have a promising player on the fringes that we feel we could raise a bit of money from, they tend to be going into the last year or two of their contracts, which makes it hard for us to generate good money there. It just never feels like we're in a great position to sell at any point.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's a reputation that you need to change over time. That you're good at selling players. That you're willing to stick to your valuations. But also, it's something that needs to happen internally. You need to be ready to sell well, I think. Whereas a lot of our recent departures have been a lot of firefighting, a lot of contract terminations, a lot of low level deals where players are falling out of favor and we just need to get them off the books. A lot of young players that haven't succeeded. I look at Nuno Tavares, Sambi Lokonga. Obviously, you can look at that and say, oh, we didn't get enough for Nuno, but I think I was just happy to kind of get him off the books, to be honest. I thought his numbers last year were inflated by a freak start at Lazio. But you can also flip it and say we got good money for Eddie. We've got good money for Smith Rowe. We could potentially get some good money for Reece Nelson this year as well. So I think in terms of our academy prospects and those who have come through the club, Joe Willock before him, Alex Iwobi before that, we've got decent fees. But I look now at who's on the fringes. Trossard, I mean, I would be really disappointed if he moves on this summer for anything less than £20 million. We could get some good money for Jakub Kiwior after his renaissance towards the end of last season when he stepped in for Gabriel. Who else could potentially be on the way out? I think Fabio Vieira, his value has tanked completely. We're not going to get anything close to our initial outlay on him. What was it, 35 million pounds? I think we'd be lucky to get 15 this summer. So it's a game, right? It depends on if they succeed on loan or not, whether or not they succeed in the team. I think winning always helps. I think Liverpool have been masters at that. They've had players on the fringes before, but because they win titles and because they win trophies, people are more open to spending money on them because they think, oh, well, they must be a good player. If they're, for example, Harvey Elliott this summer, good player, but he's been quoted at 50 million. It's just if we put one of our players up for 50 million this summer, I don't think we get that. So it's just something that needs to change over time is the most important thing. How you put yourselves forward, the reputation you hold as a selling club. Whereas I think Arsenal have been seen as a bit of a soft touch in recent years and that they're maybe willing to bend to a lower price. I think of Bernd Leno, £3 million to Fulham, small things like that, but they make a difference. So it's for sure something that Arsenal have needed to change over the years. And I hope that Andrea Berta can come in, whose record was pretty decent at Atletico Madrid. I know he made some big signings as well, but he also made some big sales. So hopefully we're in the process of continuing that, increasing our reputation. Can we get some bigger fees for players? Because ultimately it's what can help you sustain your level as a big club, when you've got not only money to spend, but you're bringing in money to keep that cycle going, if that makes sense.
For sure. And listen, I'm a Mikel Arteta fan, but I do think his management has played a part at times in that as well, because there are players that it feels like are on kind of the peripheries of the side, but he doesn't use enough. He would
when they're out, they're out. Yeah,
exactly. And when they're out, they're out. And when they're not playing, their value tanks by default. And I just feel like, slightly better management in terms of that ability to rotate and find that balance. Because what I feel is whenever he tries to rotate, he rotates too much. And we end up in a situation where the team completely loses all rhythm, all balance. And then he thinks, I can't do this anymore and I've got to revert back. But maybe if you made 1 or 2 changes, or maybe 3 instead of the 5s and 6s that you see on those occasions when we make heavy changes, actually the team would stay more balanced. Those players would perform better with the vast majority of the best 11 around them. And not only are they more useful to us that way, not only are we protecting some of our really important players that way, but we've also then got some more value in our fringe players. So I think there's a few things that we could do to get better at that. I'm going to ask for some questions from the live chat. So if you're in the live chat with us, there's over 1,000 of you with us live on YouTube, which is remarkable considering the time of morning. I know most people are at work, obviously watching Arsenal content while at work, but hey, is what it is. Like the video if you haven't done so already, subscribe and all the rest of it. Get your questions in. We'll pick a couple before we leave. Just while we're waiting for people to drop those in, Phil, the news was broken yesterday that Tottenham are closing in on Mohamed Kudus from West Ham United. And I saw a lot of people using that as a stick to beat Arsenal with over the Noni Madueke deal. What's your opinion on Mohamed Kudus? Would you have rolled the dice on him? Because for me, that ship sailed a long time ago. And I covered him maybe 5-6 times in the last 2 months of last season when I was commentating on West Ham games. And I saw a player that looked completely disinterested. I don't know what your take is on him. Is he someone that Arsenal should have been considering?
Maybe. I think in terms of individual quality, he has that match-winning ability to change a game, to score an unbelievable goal. Which, whereas Madueke, I don't think he has quite developed that yet. What I like about Kudus as well is that he's very comfortable on the left, very comfortable on the right. He's played in a strike partnership with Jared Bowen. He can even play deeper as a number 10 or as a number 8. He's very strong. I think he's got a lot of the physical build and quality for Premier League football, especially in transition. He's given us problems before. When we lost to West Ham, I think it was in March, he was excellent on the day. He really gave us a horrible time. It's difficult not to look at that as a bit of a comparison because they're similar ages, similar positions, going for more or less a similar fee. I think Kudus has X factor, and whether that's always translatable is not always easy to judge. I think he himself has a bit of an attitude issue at times. He can be a bit temperamental, slightly inconsistent. So again, that's something you need to consider. But my eyes are drawn a lot more towards Kudus in terms of that. Wow, what has he just done there? Kind of thing. I remember a bicycle kick he scored at the Etihad as well on the last game of the season. Things like that. That we maybe lack some individual quality, some individual X factor, but again, there are things about him that would worry me. So I think it's such a difficult market now because anyone between the ages of 22 and 26 who's a wide player in the Premier League is going for 55 million. Elanga and Burmo will be more or less around that. Cunha has gone for just a bit over that, his release clause. We're looking at Madueke now. We're looking at Kudus, all in a similar bracket. And it's a lot of money. There's no value anymore in the Premier League. You'll very rarely find it. So yes, I maybe look at that signing and say, could we have maybe gone for him instead? But again, like Madueke, I'm not like super convinced to say go and drop 55 million on him right now, even though I think he's a talented player. So I'm quite curious to see whether he's a fit for Spurs and B, whether Thomas Frank can get the best out of him, because I don't doubt the talent. It's just whether that can be applied consistently, which I haven't really seen at West Ham over the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be interesting to see how he does at Spurs. But we've kind of been here before, haven't we? I remember when Spurs signed Bissouma and everyone was going, why didn't we sign Bissouma? And then that never really worked out. I remember the same being said around Maddison and a few others. So, yeah, I mean, I will not use the Mohamed Kudus transfer to Tottenham as justification for why, in my opinion, Arsenal shouldn't be moving for Noni Madueke. But hey, let's take some of your questions then to wrap up. Android Mafia says, Rodrygo, he clearly feels he's overpriced and overrated, says he's skeptical about the guy, but happy to debate this. I thought this was interesting because for a long time, he's been held up, Rodrygo, as the golden signing should we be able to land him. Over the last few weeks, though, the fact that he's been left out of the Real Madrid team at the Club World Cup seems to be a bit of something going on in the background there. Has that in any way? Well, first of all, what was your opinion on Rodrygo, and has recent events in any way affected that?
Not particularly, because I think this can happen at a big club, especially when they've brought in a few players already. They have Arda Güler in that position. They have Mastantuono. They've got Endrick. They've got Mbappe. They've got Vinicius. They need to make some kind of sacrifice to be able to play all of those together. And Rodrigo is the most sellable asset. You know, he's not a key player like Vinicius. He's not Mbappe, but he's in that bracket just below where he's still a very good player, can play both sides. I really like his ability around goal. He's got very soft feet. He's got good finishing on either foot. I think if there's an option or an ability for Arsenal to sign him this summer, it would be a big mistake if we don't try at least to do it. Although again, the Madueke deal has kind of put some doubt into my mind about whether we will go for him or can afford him. I don't think he's worth 100 million. In terms of euros, I don't think he's probably worth 90 million euros. I would probably have him around 75, 70 maybe. But I'm also very wary that Real Madrid are usually tough negotiators, although when an opportunity like this can come around, a price maybe drops a little bit because of their need to sell, but also the player, what is he, 24 now? Maybe he can have that Ozil, Alexis-esque trajectory and say, I'm going to leave a huge club and still come to a big club and make it my own kind of thing. So I think there was a moment where he was underrated. Now there might be a potential for him to be a little bit overrated in terms of what he will bring to the Arsenal team. I don't think he's a drop everything and sign him immediately player like an Alexander Isak, for example, but he's very good. He's very, very good. And I think that natural ability to be able to play both sides could be hugely valuable to us. And I think he's maybe on the verge of exploding if he can find the right environment and the right club, although I'm aware that it would be very expensive.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I really rate the player, and I'd love to see us land him. But the more I see us make moves for others, the less likely this feels. And there's a question from Andy that it's a difficult one to answer, because he says, how much budget or range do you still think we have for this summer window? Was the Madueke move in mind before Gyökeres was closed? If so, that's idiotic. I mean, again, we don't know that, right? So I don't want to throw my toys out the pram about speculation and things that we don't know. I'm very, very careful not to do that. But I think, like, for me, the way I see it now, and let me know what you think, Phil, if we sign Madueke, we're probably able still to go and get Eze. But I don't think if we land Gyökeres as well, we'd be able to do much more than that in the attack. So I think it's very likely, or possible at least, that we end up with Gyökeres, Madueke, and Eze as those three signings. I feel like Rodrygo, given that we're about to drop £50 million on Madueke, is probably just a little bit out of reach. And if we did end up with the trio of Eze, Madueke, and Gyökeres, would that be enough for you? Would that improve us sufficiently, do you think?
I think so. Eze is the difference maker here, because if it's just Gyökeres and Madueke, I don't think we've done enough. Whereas I look at Eze and I think he could play as an 8, he could play as a 10, he can play out left or in wide areas, and also he solves an issue for me where we lack a lot of central threat. I think as a team, we often go wide because Saka's there, right? And we know about the right hand side with Ben White on the overlap and the link up between Odegaard. So we're very kind of predictable at times. And ultimately, teams put 3 players on Saka because they know that there's not enough threat on the left hand side. They're happy to leave Martinelli with 1 player because they know that more or less they can handle him there. So I think Eze just adds another dimension for us in that left half space. I think he brings running power. I think he brings a willingness and a desire to shoot. I think he's good in close quarters, in tight spaces. So a lot for me depends on Eze coming in, because whether it's Rodrygo or Madueke or Gyökeres, I think we need someone in that central area as well. And if it is Gyökeres, Madueke, and Eze, I think that's a very decent trio, to be honest. I wouldn't have any complaints with that. I think there's more than enough there in terms of goals, assists, proven quality in the Premier League. But if there's no Rodrygo and there's no Eze, and it's just those two, then I would have a few concerns about the outlay we've put forward. without an immediate kind of this has improved us directly, you know.
I would go as far as saying that if we signed Eze on top of Madueke and Gyökeres, my view on the Madueke deal would improve dramatically and change, and my tolerance of Arsenal going and spending that kind of money would be, you know, I'd be fine with it because I knew that we still went and did what I thought we needed to do.
But that's what we said earlier,
Yeah,
right? That Madueke is context dependent.
yeah,
So his potential arrival depends on what happens around him, and it's that simple.
yeah. And I've always felt that we've lacked dribblers, which Madueke is. I felt that we've lacked those players that are willing to just take the ball and go make something happen themselves. I think we've become a little bit too system focused. I think we've become, as you said, predictable. And maybe there's a part of that that we see because we watch, we follow, we analyze this team every single week. But if we can see it, you can bet that opposition analysts operating at the highest level can see it as well. So, you know, there is some validity to that point. And I do want mold breakers. I do want players that will jump out of the shape and go and do something different and go and drift into different areas. And I think Madueke would do that. But again, if we get the right players in around him, then my stance on that softens dramatically. And that's why, as much as I don't think on the surface of it and top line, this is a good idea, I'm kind of reserving my judgment to a degree to make sure that we don't go too far on it because it could still work out. Last question we're going to take from Jid. He says, we've announced 2 signings so far. I think we're going to announce Christian Norgard today, by the way. I think that's coming.
Yeah, it looks like it.
It looks like it, doesn't it? He says, say we get Gyökeres, Norgard, Eze, and Madueke. He's put Eze or Rodrygo. How many of those players would be starters? And don't you think that would be overcorrecting the squad? That's interesting because we've still got some very, very good players at Arsenal already. Like, it's not a case of we're needing to build from scratch here. Gyökeres, Norgard, one of Eze or Rodrygo, and Madueke. How many of those would actually go into the 11 for you? Because for me, I think it's probably 1, 2. I think 2.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not going to answer this question well because I don't really look at the team like that. I
Okay.
think we've had a clear starting 11 in the last few seasons purely because we haven't had the
depth.
level of depth or quality to be able to challenge the guys in those positions. But if we do have players like Madueke and Gyökeres and Eze who can maybe come in for 2 games and then go out for another 2 games, and then we can try Eze on the left and bring Martinelli out, and we can have Gyökeres maybe with Havertz in the left 8. You know, for me, it's about options. It's a long season. Now more than ever, football is demanding. We're going to play 60 games hopefully next year. We need options. I don't really think about it in a starting 11 way anymore because that's redundant. Imagine the best Man City teams. Sometimes they had Mahrez playing on the right, and then it was Foden playing on the right, and then they had Sane another time, and then it was Sterling another time, and it's, you know, they had so many options and ways of playing, and that is so crucial to keep people fresh and fit and firing that I don't really look at it in a starting 11 way. I just think it's so important to have a squad that you trust, and the issue for me has been Arteta hasn't done that. He's had maybe 12 players that he trusts, but we need 15 or 16. And I think if we can bring that number up, if Gyökeres can play 50 times next year and maybe start 25 games, I'm entirely happy with that. That for me is not an issue. Same with Madueke. If he can come in for 40 appearances next season, maybe starting 20, I'm completely fine with that. But the issue is that we haven't had enough quality and depth to go all the way because we're either tired or injured towards the end of the season. So my main thing was to provide quality depth and competition to the team we already have because, like you said, it's very good. It's very good.
Yeah.
It's just about balancing those issues because last season, especially towards the end, was just an absolute joke. I mean, look at some of the benches that we had in Champions League games, in Premier League games. We were bringing Kieran Tierney off the bench to play against Real Madrid. I mean, Jesus Christ, guys, you know? So
Yeah.
my issue for me is not starting 11. It's just having a squad that is good enough to compete on all fronts.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I remember not last season, actually, the season before. I remember, I can't remember what game it was, but I remember reporting on a game at the Emirates. And obviously the press box is right behind the dugouts, right? So I was sitting there And I remember thinking, we need to change something. We need to make something happen. We need to make something happen off the bench. And I remember specifically seeing Mikel Arteta with AirPod Albert sort of standing on the edge of the technical area, both looking back at the bench. And I'm thinking, here we go. They're going to make a change. And just obviously, I don't know what they were saying and I don't know what they were thinking, but the look on their faces just gave me the impression that they were looking and thought, we don't have anything here. Like, we
Who is
genuinely don't
there?
have anything. Yeah, there's nothing there. There's
There
nothing there.
was Ismail Kabia, Jack Henry
Yeah.
Francis,
At
Butler
a push,
Oyedeji, Raheem Sterling.
that's it. At a push, when everybody's fit, you've got Leandro Trossard. At a push. But that's it. So you're absolutely right to make the point about the squad. I think that's really, really important. Phil, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me, mate. I really, really appreciate your time. As you know, let people know what you're up to, where they can find you. You've got a fantastic podcast of your own. It's one of my favorites. So let people know what you got coming up and how they can find you.
Yeah, I'm always around, mate. It's always a pleasure to come on and chat with you. We don't do it enough, but schedules get in the way, plans get in the way. But I was happy to come on this morning. And yeah, you can find me on Arse blog. I do written stuff there. I do a podcast there, on the Arsenal Vision podcast as well. I'm always in and around when people aren't available. So next man up on the bench usually, and also at the Football Vision podcast as well. We cover football more generally. It could be topics from across the world. We cover South American football, European football. We do like deep dives on clubs who have gone bankrupt. We do cool stories about players who have had incredible stories. Things like that. So it's a bit more away from the Arsenal circle, which is nice sometimes. I think people need that.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, you can find me in all those places, on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, so if you fancy something different, come and find me there.
Brilliant stuff. Make sure you head over and check it out. I will add the link to the description as well as soon as we finish up here. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you haven't done so already. We've had about 1,000 of you with us live throughout the show, but we've only got 227 likes on the board, so not even half of you could be bothered to click the like button. Don't like the chat, because I've seen loads of people clicking the heart in the chat. Don't do that. Come over to the left, click the like on the video, because it really, really does help. I hate saying it, but it does make the world of difference. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review. All of that stuff really, really does help. We've got another Patreon bit coming your way this evening, so if you want to check that out, now's a good time. There's a fair few videos on there that have been released recently about some of the transfer targets, so get involved in that, and we'll be back very, very soon with more. Hopefully talking about an announcement, hopefully talking about some progress in the Victor Gyökeres deal. But as Fabrizio Romano said last night, calma for now. Anyway, thanks for joining us. See you all soon. Goodbye.